Tony, I want to talk about future global challenges in the water sector. I mean, what do you see as the big issues looking forward in the water sector and things that our students really need to know about as they start their careers in the water business? I mean, what are they going to anticipate here? It's big mega trends.
Well, in the WSS, the water supply and sanitation sector, the problems are just to meet the needs of that are unmet. So that will always be a prominent priority. It doesn't have the same sort of context in politically as does food. People don't go on the streets shouting for water supply and sanitation as they would if there was food to be considered. So that's one thing to bear in mind. So I sometimes, this is not meant to be, you've got to stop doing it. You've just got to do it aware that it is a challenge. All you need are 3 or 4 things. You need finance. You need technology, pipes and pumps and things. You need people to install and operate and keep running those things. And you need governance. And it's the governance that normally prevents the operations continuing. And it's the absence of skilled people that is the problem. So we know we've solved the problem millions of times. It's just making sure that the financial flows and the flows of skills are in place. We are not sure about water security with respect to food because so much more, there's definitely enough water available for the water supply and sanitation. We're not sure about the food side, although we've discussed it so far and indicated that we've already produced much more than we ever dreamed we would, and there's still room for further productivity increases. And there are huge potential solutions from eating sensibly and not wasting food, so that at any part of the food supply chain. The thing that I would like also to get people to realize that as human beings, we're all part of the food supply chain. And since our behavior, if you put all the increments together, determines how much is consumed, then we are, in fact, major players collectively in whether we can be secure or not. That is something which is hard to get across because people are so distant from their food because of the capacity to import food from all over the world that getting people to see that is a major problem. Whether there is enough water is something which the ground keeps changing. The position up to now has been that the agencies that are responsible, as it were, for this, like IFPRI and FAO, have come to the conclusion there was enough. But that was when we were thinking of a sort of 9 billion, possibly 10 billion, but 9 billion really, when the volume of water needed was just 1.5 billion cubic meters. But we now have a higher population to consider, and that ought to cause us to redouble our efforts to mobilize and do all the economies, or make all the economies we can, as well as all the productivity gains that we can.
When you're talking about whether we have enough water to grow enough food for a global population of 12 billion people, I mean, you're still relying on this virtual water trade. I mean, we've had a rise of nationalism now in the United States and UK, other parts of the world, which is throwing up potential trade barriers. Do you see any risk in sort of a new protectionism in terms of disrupting this virtual water trade?
Well, if people are careless, we could get into that position. What I have, alongside everything I've said about virtual water, is that in order to have peace, we need trade, and to trade, we need peace. So if we have disrupted international relations that would interrupt trade, we are really doing something very, very dangerous. So one needs to be careful about that. If you then look at the places where food comes from, the United States is still the pivotal producer, it will be overtaken by Brazil. In fact, we all as consumers should breathe a sigh of relief, and there is a huge amount of water in Brazil and South America generally, and it is the water tower of the world, and it is doing remarkable things in the past 20 years in that if you look at the numbers, the American exports are leveling off, but the exports of Brazil and South America are doing that, and also of the former Soviet Union and Ukraine. So what we can know from the recent history is that producers can in fact increase production, and economists who are don't care about the environment and the security of the ecosystems can say, well, the price spike that we've just gone through, 2008-12, has shown us that if you raise the price of food, farmers respond. And, they had a great time because they were getting high prices and they produced more.
I feel compelled to defend some economists who care about the environment. As an environmental economist myself, I also agree with you that the damages to the environment should be incorporated in the price. Do you want to say something about China? You talked about Brazil, the United States. Where does China fit in the picture?
A whole lot of things that one has drawn attention to have been hidden, but people realize that they are significant. But the history of China in the past 40 years has been extraordinary in that up till 1979 its population was racing ahead, and then the Chinese government put in the one-child policy. By then the Chinese population had got to over 1 billion on 1.1, 1.2 billion. Since 79, 300, possibly 400 million people, that's a lot of people, that's more than in the United States, are not there producing using 2.5 cubic meters of water a day, not there. That's, when engineers and water scientists talk about demand management, they're talking about various things that you could get people to behaviorally do, and technologies which would help to demand manage. But there's, 5% of the world's population is not there. 25% of China's population not there. Now that's just 40 years. There's now the rest of the century to go, and it's leveled off. It's going to go down, back from 1.4 to 1 billion. So that altogether, China will have taken 1 billion people. In other words, there would have been 13 billion, or let's say 12 billion, there will only be 11, because of, these are eye-watering numbers in terms of any predictions which the climate change people can make.